Attack on Libya. The Libyan armed forces have issued a command to all units to observe an immediate ceasefire, a Libyan army spokesman said on Sunday. The Libyan armed forces have issued a command to all military units to safeguard an immediate ceasefire from 9 p.m. Earlier, a defiant Muammar Gaddafi vowed a long war after the United States and European militaries blasted his forces with airstrikes and over 110 cruise missiles early Sunday, hitting air defenses and at least 2 major air bases and shaking the Libyan capital with explosions and anti-aircraft fire. Anti-aircraft fire erupted in the Libyan capital Sunday night, with volleys of tracer fire arcing into the air, marking the start of a second round of Allied strikes on the country. There was no immediate word on the targets in the new round of strikes. The heavy chatter of anti-aircraft defenses began soon after nightfall. Despite the strikes, Gaddafi's troops lashed back, bombarding the rebel-held city of Misrata with artillery and tanks on Sunday, the opposition reported. In the overnight barrage, ship-fired Tomahawk cruise missiles and bombs and missiles from an international arsenal of warplanes including American B-2 stealth bombers and F-15 and F-16 fighter bombers rained down on Libyan targets, including ground forces, in the widest international military effort since the Iraq War. The air assault came as Gaddafi's overwhelming firepower was threatening to crush the month-old rebellion against his 41-year rule. State television said 48 people were killed in the strikes. There was no way to independently verify the claims. The strikes gave immediate, if temporary, relief to the besieged rebel capital, Benghazi, in eastern Libya. Airstrikes, apparently from French aircraft, devastated a Libyan tank force 12 miles, 20 kilometers south of Benghazi. At least 7 demolished tanks were still smoldering in a field hours later, 5 of them with their turrets and treads blown off, alongside 2 charred armored personnel carriers, and around a dozen damaged jeeps and SUVs of the type often used by Gaddafi fighters. Jubilant rebel fighters climbed on the remains on the tanks, shooting assault rifles in the air in celebration. It was not known how many people were killed in the strike. Any bodies had been taken away in the morning, but shredded boots and foam mattresses and tomato paste cans strewn around the scene suggested the Gaddafi forces had been camped at the site when they were hit. U.S. and European military officials said the assault was only the first wave in the international operation in Libya, but already there were signs of differences over the goals. France took a more assertive stance, suggesting the Allies' intervention must ultimately lead to Gaddafi's downfall. The United States military appeared more wary of overtly taking a side and getting pulled deeper and deeper into Libya's conflict, with the top American U.S. officer saying Gaddafi's ouster wasn't necessarily the goal. The initial assault aimed to take out Gaddafi's air defenses to clear the way for enforcing a no-fly zone, targeting more than 20 radar systems, communication centers, and surface-to-air missile sites. But the United Nations resolution authorizing the action goes much further, allowing all necessary means to protect civilians. So that means the United States and Europeans have a free hand in the next stages to attack Gaddafi's ground forces besieging rebel cities or other military targets. The rebels, who control most of the eastern half of Libya, hope the Allied intervention will tip the scales back in their favor after an onslaught by Gaddafi's forces threatened to reverse their gains early in the uprising and eventually lead to the toppling of the Libyan leader. Western air forces were expected to use daylight on Sunday to assess what damage they had done, and there appeared to be a lull in the aerial bombardment. China and Russia, which abstained in a United Nations Security Council vote last week endorsing intervention, expressed regret at the military action. China's foreign ministry said it hoped the conflict would not lead to a greater loss of civilian life. The intervention, after weeks of diplomatic wrangling, was welcomed in Benghazi with a mix of apprehension and relief. The strikes, launched from some 25 ships, including 3 U.S. submarines in the Mediterranean, followed a meeting in Paris of Western and Arab leaders backing the intervention. Some analysts have questioned what Western powers will do if the Libyan leader digs in, especially since they did not believe they would be satisfied with a de facto partition which left rebels in the east and Gaddafi running a rump state in the west. France and Britain have taken a lead role in pushing for international intervention in Libya. The United States, after embarking on wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, acknowledged on Saturday it was in charge of operations, but said it intended to switch to a coalition command in the coming days. OPEC member Libya is the 17th largest producer in the world, 3rd largest producer in Africa, and holds the continent's largest crude oil reserves. It normally pumps around 1.6 million barrels per day, 85% of which is exported to Europe. Its output is equivalent to approximately 2% of global oil consumption. More war and rumors of war, and these are signs of the end times, transition days, which is a continuing day-by-day process happening all around the world, and are more physical manifestations of the book of Revelation. Revelation, chapter 11. And there was given me a reed like unto a rod, and the angel stood, saying, Rise, and measure the temple of God, and the altar, and them that worship therein. 2. That the court which is without the temple leave out, and measure it not, for it is given unto the Gentiles, and the holy city shall they tread under foot 42 months. 3. And I will give power unto my 2 witnesses, and they shall prophesy 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth. 4. These are the 2 olive trees, and the 2 candlesticks, standing before the God of the earth. 5. And if any man will hurt them, fire proceeds out of their mouth, and devours their enemies. And if any man will hurt them, he must in this manner be killed. 6. These have power to shut heaven, but it rain not in the days of the prophecy, and to have power over waters, to turn them to blood, and to smite the earth with all plagues, as often as they will. 7. And when they shall have finished their testimony, the beast that ascends out of the bottomless pit shall make war against them, and shall overcome them, and kill them. 8. And their dead bodies shall lie in the street of the great city, which spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt, where also our Lord was crucified. 9. And they of the people and kindreds and tongues and nations shall see their dead bodies 3 days and a half, and shall not suffer their dead bodies to be put in graves. 10. And they that dwell upon the earth shall rejoice over them, and make merry, and shall send gifts one to another, because these 2 prophets tormented them that dwelt on the earth. 11. And after 3 days and a half the Spirit of life from God entered into them. They stood upon their feet, and great fear fell upon them which saw them. 12. And they heard a great voice from heaven, saying unto them, Come up here. And they ascended up to heaven in a cloud, and their enemies beheld them. 13. And the same hour was there a great earthquake, and the 10th part of the city fell, and in the earthquake were slain of humans 7,000, and the remnant were scared, and gave glory to the God of heaven. 14. The second woe is past, and, behold, the third woe comes quickly. 15. And the 7th angel sounded, and there were great voices in heaven, saying, The nations of this world are becoming the nations of our Lord and of his Christ, and he shall reign forever and ever. Again, Luke chapter 21, verse 9. But when ye shall hear of wars and commotions, be not terrified, for these things must first come to pass, but the end is not by and by. 10. Then Jesus said, Nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. 11. And great earthquakes shall be in divers places, and famines, and pestilences, and fearful sights, and great signs shall there be from heaven. Yes, it's time for all prophecy to be fulfilled, and there are many different kinds of signs happening daily all around the world. Everything is connected, and everything is numbered.